Mandiri punya banyak fitur yang sayang untuk kamu lewatkan. Keren banget kan? Yuk, download sekarang juga. Yang ikonnya kuning ya. Nikmati semua kemudahan yang dihadirkan New Livin khusus untuk kamu. Living a lively life with New Livin by Mandiri.
Kita semua memiliki prioritas yang berbeda. Prioritasku dalam berkarya adalah mewujudkan sebuah visi. Aku ingin semua yang telah kucapai tidak berhenti di sini, namun terus berkembang. Tidak ada yang memahami prioritasku selain diriku sendiri dan Bank Mandiri.
Mandiri Prioritas, memahami prioritas Anda untuk kini dan masa depan.
Yuk, kenalan dengan New Livin by Mandiri, super app financial dari Bank Mandiri yang siap jadi sahabat kamu. Install sekarang dan nikmati beragam fitur menarik dengan tampilan futuristik yang tentunya bikin transaksi kamu lebih nyaman. Tunggu apa lagi? Download dan cobain sekarang ya. Jangan salah pilih, New Livin by Mandirinya yang logo kuning. Buka aplikasi New Livin, klik punya kartu debit atau kredit Mandiri, baca dan setujui syarat dan ketentuannya, terus masukin tuh data kartu dan informasi pribadi kamu. Pastiin udah bener semua ya. Untuk melakukan verifikasi, kirim SMS tanpa mengubah isi pesannya. Untuk kamu yang pakai handphone Android, setelah SMS terkirim, jangan lupa tekan tombol back dan kembali lagi ke aplikasi New Livin. Supaya kamu bisa bertransaksi dengan aman dan nyaman, pastikan kombinasi password yang kamu pilih tidak mengandung informasi pribadi, mengandung perulangan, atau berurutan. Selesai deh, kamu sudah bisa bertransaksi pakai New Livin. Sekarang, kamu udah bisa melakukan berbagai transaksi di mana saja, kapan saja. Cobain juga fitur tarik tunai tanpa kartu, transaksi praktis pakai Quick Pick, dan cek sisa saldo rekening atau sisa limit kartu kredit dengan cepat dari layar depan. Semuanya bisa tanpa login. Nggak hanya itu loh, New Livin by Mandiri punya banyak fitur yang sayang untuk kamu lewatkan. Keren banget kan? Yuk, download sekarang juga. Yang ikonnya kuning ya. Nikmati semua kemudahan yang dihadirkan New Livin khusus untuk kamu. Living a lively life with New Livin by Mandiri.
Kita semua memiliki prioritas yang berbeda. Prioritasku dalam berkarya adalah mewujudkan sebuah visi. Aku ingin semua yang telah kucapai tidak berhenti di sini, namun terus berkembang. Tidak ada yang memahami prioritasku selain diriku sendiri dan Bank Mandiri.
Mandiri Prioritas, memahami prioritas Anda untuk kini dan masa depan.
Kita semua memiliki prioritas yang berbeda. Prioritasku dalam berkarya adalah mewujudkan sebuah visi. Aku ingin semua yang telah kucapai tidak berhenti di sini, namun terus berkembang. Tidak ada yang memahami prioritasku selain diriku sendiri dan Bank Mandiri.
Mandiri Prioritas, memahami prioritas Anda untuk kini dan masa depan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi hadirin semua. Semoga semua dalam keadaan sehat. Apa kabar Anda? Kali ini kita berjumpa dalam Wealth Investment Workshop The Next Big Things, Healthcare Innovation and Investment. Saya Iqbal Himawan akan memandu sesi webinar pada hari ini. Nah, pandemi membuat sektor bisnis ini berfokus pada ketahanan atau resilience dan juga kemampuan beradaptasi dengan menerapkan strategi, kemudian setelah itu berproses melalui lingkungan bisnis yang saat ini sedang berada di bawah tekanan. Nah, yang paling menonjol adalah digitalisasi yang telah dilakukan oleh semua sektor dan perubahan cara customer terlibat dengan bisnis itu sendiri. Nah, platform online consumer dan model bisnis digital yang sedang berkembang ini umumnya memang telah menarik banyak minat investor. Namun salah satu yang paling terasa dampaknya sejak pandemi ini adalah industri healthcare atau kesehatan. Dengan sistem rumah sakit serta obat-obatan baru yang membutuhkan waktu cukup lama untuk akhirnya bisa dipasarkan ini, maka diperlukan inovasi bagi healthcare dalam operasinya. Tambah lagi sebelum pandemi jumlah dokter dan fasilitasnya kalau kita lihat angkanya ini tidak sebanding ya dengan jumlah populasi dan cakupan area Indonesia. Sebagian besar selama ini ya lagi-lagi hanya terfokus di Pulau Jawa saja. Nah, dengan munculnya layanan kesehatan online ini dapat membantu menjembatani kesenjangan ini. Untuk membahas lebih lanjut tentang hal ini dan bagaimana pandemi dapat mempercepat investasi di sektor healthcare, tema webinar kali ini adalah Healthcare Innovation and Investment. Sebelum saya memperkenalkan narasumber yang sudah bergabung dengan webinar kita pada pagi hari ini, nanti kami akan beri sedikit gambaran untuk acara webinar hari ini. Nanti akan ada sesi diskusi. Kemudian nanti kami akan membuka ruang pertanyaan untuk audiens. Nah, jika Anda nanti punya pertanyaan untuk pembicara kami, silakan ketik di tab tanya jawab ya pada saat sesi Q&A di bawah layar dan harap usahakan agar pertanyaan tetap singkat dan langsung ke intinya karena kami akan mencoba menjawab sebanyak mungkin pertanyaan. And before we start the discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today. Yang pertama ada Pak Nathanael Faibis. Nathanael has been the founder and CEO of Alo Dokter since 2014. Nathanael is a seasoned tech and healthcare entrepreneur in emerging markets. He was part of the core teams that started Lazada in Vietnam and Indonesia. He also led the launch of innovative pharma market research in several African and Asian countries on behalf of the top pharma companies. Pak Nathan, good morning. How are you?
Really good, really good. What about you?
Hope you're doing great, just like all the guests that already attending this webinar for today. And I'm going to introduce the second speaker for today. Ada Bapak Joshua Agusta, lulusan Universitas Indonesia dengan gelar Bachelor of Arts di bidang pemasaran dan saat ini mengambil gelar Master di bidang administrasi publik. Joshua telah menghabiskan hampir seluruh karirnya dengan memulai dan berinvestasi di dalamnya. Setelah bergabung dengan C Group yang bekerja dengan perusahaan rintisan digital, ia pindah ke dunia investasi dengan MDI Ventures, bertanggung jawab atas penyebaran dana ke investi dan pengelolaan dana. Joshua lalu bergabung dengan Mandiri Capital pada tahun 2019, di mana ia bertanggung jawab atas 2 dari dana yang mereka kelola. Dan baru-baru ini ditunjuk sebagai wakil ketua untuk investasi dan kemitraan di Kadin dan merupakan penerima penghargaan Forbes Asia 30 Under 30 pada tahun ini. Pak Joshua, selamat pagi. Apa kabar, Pak?
Selamat pagi, siang.
Oh iya, sudah siang. Ini karena semangatnya masih sejak pagi ya, Pak. Baik, Pak Joshua, terima kasih ya sudah bergabung dalam sesi webinar kali ini. Kemudian sebenarnya masih ada satu narasumber atau speaker yang akan bergabung pada hari ini. Kami masih menunggu, yakni Mr. Suprit Ban. Nanti kami akan pastikan apakah nanti sudah bisa bergabung dengan diskusi kita pada siang hari ini. Mr. Suprit Ban is a Bachelor of Technology graduate of the Punjab Technical University and holding an MBA from the Army Institute of Management, Kolkata. Suprit has over 19 years of experience working in finance, and after starting his career in insurance, he moved to the investment side and spent 8 years with DPS BlackRock, where he attained the position of Senior Vice President for Sales. In 2013, Suprit joined JP Morgan Asset Management, initially as the head of fund sales in India before moving to Singapore, where he is now responsible for the firm's sub-advisory business in Southeast Asia and India. Kita akan coba sapa ya. Pak Suprit, apakah sudah bergabung? Baik, nanti kita masih menunggu Pak Suprit untuk bergabung dengan sesi webinar kita pada pagi hari ini. Kalau begitu saya akan ke Pak Joshua terlebih dahulu deh. Pak Joshua, ini istilahnya nih guru ya di dunia startup, kemudian di venture capitalist. Pak Joshua, apa sih yang membuat Anda tertarik? Apa sih magnet dari startup ini yang membuat Anda akhirnya tertarik untuk berinvestasi?
Sebenarnya awalnya waktu saya mulai 2013 tuh saya juga nggak tahu startup itu apa ya, first and foremost gitu. Jadi mungkin saya sekarang punya karir di startup itu eventually kind of sebenarnya nggak didesain dari awal, bisa dibilang seperti itu. Cuman eventually sekarang as a venture capitalist semuanya tuh revolve around entrepreneurship gitu ya. Jadi pemodal ventura, investor seperti saya dan rekan-rekan yang lain itu basically punya karir, punya pekerjaan karena adanya entrepreneurship gitu. Sebenarnya orang-orang kayak Pak Nathan sekarang ini gitu, yang punya idea, yang punya innovation gitu ya, untuk solving the problems yang ada di market melalui produk yang mereka, melalui perusahaan yang mereka gitu ya. So what excites me the most is always been meeting new great entrepreneurs gitu ya, especially mereka yang mungkin awalnya mulainya bukan dari background yang ini ya, bukan dari background yang privilege gitu, yang eventually dengan adanya entrepreneurship ini, dengan adanya startup yang mereka buat, yaitu mereka leveling up the playing field gitu eventually. Kira-kira sih seperti itu sih. It always excites me to meet new ideas, new founders, new breed of founders yang punya passion dan punya visi ya untuk untuk menawarkan solusi ke pasar dengan memberikan proposition baru untuk sebuah problem yang ada di pasar gitu. And itu nggak cuma di healthcare doang, dan itu di multiple sector sekarang di Indonesia ya. Itu yang always excites me. Itu yang masih motivasi saya setiap hari lah untuk kerja di sini.
Ya, mungkin juga bikin excited di healthcare tentunya Pak Nathan ya. Ini dengan Alo Dokternya Pak Nathan. I would like to probably Alo Dokter is already well known, but before I'm going to Pak Nathan, I'm going to say hello to Pak Suprit. Pak Suprit, good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Good afternoon.
All right,
to you.
thank you. Finally, thank you for joining us today. But before we're requesting for your overview, I would like to go to Pak Nathan first. Pak Nathan, Alo Dokter is already well known, but could you please elaborate just a little bit of the background to the company, the main service you are providing, and how you work within the healthcare market to finally connect between the doctors and the patients, Pak Nathan?
Thank you. So Alo Dokter is a company that we started with Suchi, with my co-founder, 7 years ago in 2014. At the beginning, we started the company to provide medical information that was at the same time easy to understand and medically accurate in Bahasa Indonesia. So back at the time, it was really, really hard to find good information in local language for most people. So Suchi and me, we are seeing a lot of people around us taking very bad decisions for their health based on what they were reading online. So the simple idea was to add basically medical content that is basically written and checked by doctors for the masses, for everyone, so that whenever you have a basic medical question, you can go online. After you have a consultation, you can go online and find information. So that's how we started. We basically article and video about healthcare. It picked up really fast, and then gradually over the years, we built what we call today the super hub for healthcare. So with medical content, we also have the largest telemedicine platform in the country with over 1,000 doctors active in telemedicine. Basically, you can come to Alo Dokter, and within 2 minutes, you can chat with one of our doctors. We have Dr. Lumum, but we also have doctor specialists. We have more than 20 specialist type of doctor on the platform. After a consultation online, you can also book an appointment to one of our 1,200 hospital and clinic. Today, Alo Dokter is working with big hospital chains such as Mitra Keluarga, Siloam, Bunda, and so forth, so that you can, from your smartphone, choose the right doctor around you and basically visit a doctor that you book within a few minutes on the platform. We have also started developing our e-pharmacy offering earlier this year. So after the consultation, if you get a prescription from the doctor, you can get your drug delivered to your home. So basically, we are building a end-to-end ecosystem where you can manage large part of your health directly from your smartphone, and we're going to have more and more innovation coming in the coming years as well to have a paradigm shift where online is not only a supplement to healthcare, but basically managing your healthcare online will be the core of managing your health and the health of your family, and then we go offline to get additional services, right? But the core of managing your health, we believe in the future, is going to be from your smartphone. More and more innovation are going to come in the coming years. Right now, it's more seen as a supplement to, let's say, traditional healthcare, but we believe that in the coming years, digital health is going to become just healthcare, right? There will not be a differentiation between the two of them. On top of that, we have also insurance services. So we partner with one of our investors, Equis, to propose cutting-edge insurance product. On our side, we believe that by using technology, we can provide healthcare services at a much cheaper cost than traditional solution. So we are developing cutting-edge health insurance product for consumer and for corporate partners on our platform. So we're building basically, as I mentioned, a healthcare super app ecosystem where you can manage large part of your health from prevention to financing your health into a single application.
Okay, everything is in the palm of your hands. It's very come in handy, especially in this pandemic times. And I want to go to Pak Suprit. Pak Suprit, could you give us an overview of how the investment landscape has evolved, especially over the period of the pandemic, Pak Suprit?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think what my fellow presenters also spoke about is very important, because innovation is really driving a lot of the developments across different industries, including healthcare. I think it's well known, given the fact that we are all doing this virtually. By the way, if you ask me, I would do this honestly, personally, myself, in person, standing in front of the audience and presenting in a ballroom. But the reality is that the situation or the circumstances over the last almost 2 years have compelled us to accelerate our transition towards more digitalization, not just in terms of technology, but several other fields as well. So, the way that investments have transformed is to recognize this acceleration of shift or transformation towards digitalization. It's not to say that the core industries aren't important. The core sectors, the old school traditional sectors are important. But what this slide shows you in front of you is that given the tough circumstances, particularly over the last 2 years, the importance of some of these disruptive themes has become ever more greater. I don't need to tell you about digitalization, but even financial evolution in emerging markets such as India, Indonesia, China, etc. Millennials, Generation Z, they're the next generation of consumers. I belong to Generation X. Sadly, I'm old enough not to be in a millennial category. But Generation Z and millennials are going to consume differently from previous generations. It's important to recognize what the fellow speaker spoke about. So, Hello Doctor, which I briefly heard from my fellow panelist, is really appealing to the preferences of these new generation of consumers. If you notice, the fourth block on my slide is exactly the topic of the discussion today, which is healthcare innovation. And I'll deep dive into that, as well as energy revolution, which is, if you've been following developments over the last couple of months, there is a tremendous amount of focus globally by governments, by policymakers, institutions on climate change solutions. So watch this space. This will continue to drive innovation. Iqbal, I'm just going to pause there. If you would like me to continue with my presentation, or would you like to keep this Q&A for the time being? Because I have a few other slides. I can either launch into it now, or would you like to keep this more interactive?
You can continue, Pak Suprit. We're going to adjust the presentation.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so continuing with the theme of healthcare, really at the core of healthcare lies the developments that are taking place globally. The reality is that in Indonesia, the average population age is below 30, so it's a young nation, as is most of emerging markets, like my home country of India. Again, the average age of the population is below 30. But the moment you start going to some of the richer nations, like the US, the average age is close to about 40. If you actually start going towards Japan, the average age of the country is about 50. Europe, again, more than 42, 43. Even China, which is an emerging market, the average age is closer to 40, 41. So demographics, particularly in the richer or more wealthier countries, is turning out to be that which encourages more innovation in healthcare because the population is indeed aging. Younger countries like Indonesia and India don't have this big challenge of taking care of the older ones, or the young people taking more care of the older ones, but we will get there at some point. So what's really important is that this big shift in demographics is leading to a need even before the pandemic made us sit up and realize that there needs to be more investment, that there is really need for this. And of course, I mentioned developed markets are ahead. They are more wealthier. They have invested more in healthcare. But I think going forward over the next several years, you will see emerging markets, such as the ones that I mentioned, Indonesia, India, rest of Southeast Asia, and even China investing more into healthcare as the needs for their citizens improves or increases over time. If you go to the next slide, you will see the broad categories of where does innovation come from. So I'm not talking about traditional pharmaceutical. Clearly, there is work that's going on in traditional pharmaceutical, but there are other fields like gene therapies, and I'll come to it in just a moment, which is really bleeding edge or cutting edge of medical science, and even topics like medical technology or wearables, which really is driving change or innovation in several of these places. If you go to the next slide, you will see a few examples of what innovative companies are coming through. So AlloDoctor is one of the examples. A similar one in telemedicine in the US is a name like Teladoc. Very similar model. It is digital healthcare, digital consultation, and really has been accelerated because of the situation that we find ourselves over the last 2 years. So unless there is life or death situation which requires you to go to a hospital, in the middle of a raging pandemic, you would typically avoid going to a hospital to avoid infections. And Teladoc, or for that matter, its counterpart here in Indonesia or Southeast Asia, like AlloDoctor, if I've understood it well, do offer these remote virtual solutions, which not necessarily for really serious, but more diagnostic, prescriptive level of discussions can certainly take place at that point. But even other categories coming into medical technology or wearables, you see names like iRhythm, Dexcom, Insulet. Let me spend a couple of moments on that. Dexcom is really one of the leaders in wearables when it comes to constant glucose monitoring devices. It, as the name suggests, is actually quite useful for diabetic patients. As the name also suggests, it constantly monitors a patient's blood glucose levels. And instead of constantly pricking themselves to take blood to evaluate and analyze their blood sugar levels and to send that report to the doctor, what Dexcom devices do is to constantly keep monitoring blood glucose levels of the patients. The patients can go about their daily lives, their daily activities, but at the same time, the doctor or the hospital continues to receive that information and can remotely diagnose the patient and prescribe. Insulet is in a similar business, which is continuous insulin monitoring as well as delivery mechanism. So the pods that Insulet makes are worn by diabetic patients. So again, instead of pricking themselves with needles 4 or 5 times in a day to administer insulin, the pod actually constantly or continuously administers insulin to a diabetic patient. And again, the patient can lead a general healthy life. iRhythm that you see is clearly, as the name suggests, more focused towards cardiovascular issues, particularly around heart arrhythmia, irregular heartbeats. Again, these are medical devices, high-tech monitoring devices, which the patients can actually wear. They're quite comfortable, convenient. What that does is it allows the patient to go about their daily lives, work, play, socialize, go about their daily activities, while this small little patch or device constantly monitors a heart rhythm, which is then analyzed again by doctors and particularly useful for patients who have heart arrhythmia or irregular heartbeats. Just a few examples of how technology has enabled medical science to be able to capture or gather information without necessarily getting the patient to be admitted in a hospital or in a medical facility. So I realized that I've covered a fair bit of examples. If you go to the next slide, please. This is the other one, the cutting edge of medical science, gene therapies. I spoke about a diabetic patient. Now, generally speaking, a diabetic patient needs to be treated for the rest of his or her life. Gene therapy actually changes that approach. Instead of treating a patient, the ambition through gene therapy is to cure the patient of that illness. And that typically gene therapy requires fundamentally altering the gene sequence of a patient. So if there is a faulty DNA or a faulty gene, the gene therapy actually requires that faulty gene or the DNA to be fixed so that the patient, instead of being treated, can be cured potentially for the rest of his life. There are a couple of examples that are mentioned here, names such as Amicus and Arrowhead. Hepatitis B, which is a very well-known illness, particularly in emerging markets and less affluent countries. Arrowhead is specifically working on gene therapy to cure hepatitis B and cardiovascular diseases as well. So remember, the ambition of gene therapy is not to treat patients for the rest of their lives, but to indeed fix faulty genes and hopefully cure patients in advance. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is another example of how technology is being utilized to cure severe issues. Now, I hope none of you on this call have had kidney stones. But if you've been unfortunate to have one, you would realize that it's a very painful experience, one that doesn't require invasive surgery and can indeed be solved through technology using shockwaves. So Shockwave Medical, which uses innovative sound waves to break down those deposits in kidneys, which are stones. Shockwave actually, as a company, has innovated to miniaturize their technology, which is currently being used to dissolve kidney stones to address cardiovascular diseases. Now, clearly, I'm not a doctor, so all of this is acquired, read information. But cardiovascular diseases, some of them do involve calcification of arteries. So over a period of time, because of our lifestyle, because of our eating habits, calcium deposits do narrow our arteries. Instead of invasive surgeries like stents and others, what Shockwave has done is to miniaturize through technology, their sound wave technology, which actually breaks down these calcium deposits in arteries to really open up the arteries again. It doesn't mean that the patient can go and start having fried chicken and just after 6 months go get his arteries cleaned. But for severe illnesses which require invasive surgeries, again, this potentially offers solution. If you could go to the next slide, please. So safe to say that plenty of innovation is driving research across multiple places, multiple fields, medicines in the fields of cancer, diabetes, rare diseases like immunological disorders. All of that is current, and therefore the amount of money, resources that are going to be dedicated is going to be significant. So between 2010, which was the previous decade, to 2035, which is in about 15 years' time, OECD countries would have doubled their healthcare expenditure. And actually by 2060 would have quadrupled their healthcare expenditure. And let's not forget the very important emerging markets, because a big part of the humanity does reside in emerging markets between India, China, Indonesia. These are very populous nations. And as affluence grows in these countries, the amount of resources that are going to be dedicated towards these fields is going to increase as well. In a way, if you can go to the next slide, all of this, sorry, let's skip the slide and go to the next one, please. Next slide, please. Next, please. In a way, at JP Morgan Asset Management, we manage close to about $2.5 trillion of assets in our different strategies. One of those strategies we're quite pleased to be running with our partners in Indonesia, Mandiri Investasi, where we are sub-advisors to them for an Islamic global disruptor strategy, which is available as Mandiri Global Equity Sharia Dollar Strategy. The real process that we follow in that is to identify an opportunity, look at what innovation is driving that opportunity, and is there any catalyst that is accelerating that opportunity? And that's how we build that portfolio. A good example of that is on the next slide. It's a part of that medical technology, a name called Intuitive Surgical, and hopefully this gives you a representation of in asset management world, particularly in JP Morgan, how do we identify good investment opportunities, not just in healthcare, but broader industries as well. But let's take Intuitive Surgical, which is a great example of healthcare innovation. Intuitive Surgical is in the field of surgical robots, specifically those which help doctors perform procedures with minimal invasion, which means the minutest of cuts, and those robots do the job of what otherwise would require a bigger incision. The bigger incision would mean that even if the procedure is successful, the patient takes a longer time to recover. What that does is it takes away from a healthy, normal lifestyle of the patient. It also means that the hospital has dedicated a room, a bed infrastructure to a patient who's recovering, instead of a patient who should probably go through another procedure. So surgical robots, even though they require minimal invasion, allow win-win for both the patient as well as for the doctor or the hospital. For the patient, minimal invasion means that once the surgery is done, minimal invasion means that the recovery time is a lot lesser. That implies that the patient can go about living his or her regular lifestyle quite soon. So it's a great win for the patient. For the hospital, as I mentioned, instead of having a patient recover on a hospital bed, which by the way is never a profit-making or a profitable idea for a hospital, instead dedicating that bed infrastructure or resources to a new patient who can get that surgery done is a more profitable idea. So the sooner the patient recovers, it's great for the patient. It's also good for the hospital because they're able to use their infrastructure for the next procedure, which is indeed revenue making for them. So win-win both ways. Currently, less than 5% of the surgeries in the US use these surgical robots. So the opportunity is great, which is another 95%. The innovation I spoke about, it's a win-win for both. And the acceleration is, you can see on the right-hand side that even countries like China have actually approved this technology and have actually dedicated a certain amount of quota of dedicating, let's say, 154 new robots. 154 is a significant number because each one of these machines cost about $4 to $5 million US dollars. So this is a classic example of opportunity, innovation, and acceleration driving investment decisions that we then utilize in our investment decisions. So, hopefully this brings all of this together. Final slide, and I'll pass it back to Iqbal, is really the next slide really speaks about what after the pandemic. It's obvious there is going to be more focus and more resources dedicated towards healthcare as a space, which is realized by governments, institutions, as well as individuals. The lockdowns that took place, and as a result, the disruptions in supply chain that took place during that time is going to mean that supply chain of healthcare is going to be localized more and more. It's not to say that all of it can be localized, but some critical parts, knowing fully well that if lockdowns do happen in the future, you don't want to be at the mercy of supply chain coming from a different part of the world for you to complete your supply chain. I think businesses like Doctor have great potential in the future, like telemedicine or Teladoc that I spoke about in the future in my earlier part of the presentation. So increase in telemedicine. Clearly, as I mentioned, the next generation of consumers, whether it's millennials, Generation Z, even those with comorbidities who don't want to expose themselves to increased risk of infection in a hospital, will access these virtual modes more and more. And finally, there will be more investments because of what I spoke about, demographics, emerging market penetration in just innovating when it comes to healthcare, whether it's gene therapy, traditional medicine, wearables, or medical technology. With that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the overview, Mr. Suprit. Now we get a big picture. It's interesting that you mentioned about the demography. It's like a wake-up call. It's not waiting just not after the pandemic, but even before the pandemic. It's like a wake-up call for us that the healthcare, systems have a big prospect in the future, and one of them is Allo Doctor. I want to go to Pak Joshua. Pak Joshua, tadi sudah disebutkan bahwa demografi itu ternyata memang menunjukkan bahwa pasarnya ini besar sekali di masa depan. Tidak usah menunggu pandemi. Nanti akan lebih banyak lagi jasa seperti ini dibutuhkan, apalagi dengan sistem baru, dengan menggunakan digitalisasi atau teknologi. Nah, Indonesia sendiri ini kan pasar yang sangat subur ya Pak, untuk startup. Nah, sebagai gambaran, total ini sekitar ada berapa startup di Indonesia? Kemudian kalau untuk healthcare sendiri, bagaimana Anda memandang itu Pak? Termasuk prospek ke depannya dari sudut pandang VC atau mungkin dari sumber lain?
I think kalau jumlah startupnya sendiri kita susah ya. Sekarang hitungnya ya udah banyak banget, maybe ribuan gitu. Tapi I think from the latest numbers yang kita bisa dapat itu untuk 2021 first half saja itu ada 300 startups yang tercatat dapat pendanaan gitu ya. 300 startups gitu. Most of them early stage definitely. Dan yang paling menarik ini sebenarnya dari statistik ini dari deal value-nya sebenarnya yang lebih menarik. Deal value itu maksudnya jumlah uang yang diinvest ke startups ya di deals di Indonesia gitu. Di first half 2021 itu sebesar 4,7 billion US dollar. Berarti sekitar 60 triliun ya, 60 triliun rupiah. Itu baru first half, belum second half ya. Second half numbers-nya belum keluar gitu. Nah, 4,7 billion US dollars ini sudah surpass angka investasi di Indonesia untuk startups di 5 tahun terakhir, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 sama 2016 sampai 2020 lah basically. Jadi selama 2016 sampai 2020 belum pernah jumlah uang yang masuk ke startups di Indonesia belum pernah ada yang sampai 4,7 billion. 2021 first half saja udah 4,7 billion gitu. So it's really big jadi opportunity-nya sekarang ya. At least from the bullishness of the investors gitu, yang masuk ke tech deals di Indonesia di sini kelihatan sekali 2021 dan all the crucial sectors termasuk healthcare gitu ya, semuanya growing double digit. Ya healthcare basically is a new, bisa dibilang new new big sectors lah di Indonesia. Tadinya kan it's all about e-commerce, fintech lah, media, transportation, travel gitu ya. Travel kan karena COVID dia agak kecil gitu ya. Healthcare nih yang baru karena eventually tadi Nathan sempat bilang soal platform teknologi tadinya suplemen gitu ya. Sekarang karena pandemi tanda kutip terima kasih kepada pandeminya gitu ya, udah nggak suplemen lagi gitu, jadi primer gitu kan, karena orang nggak bisa ke dokter nih sekarang, yang mau nggak mau akhirnya pakai telemedicine gitu kan, orang nggak bisa datang ke apotek beli obat, akhirnya pakai medicine delivery gitu kan ya. Orang tadinya nggak peduli sama kesehatannya mereka gitu, nggak aware bahwa mereka butuh insurance, akhirnya mereka cari health insurance kan gitu. Definitely it's something to see. Healthcare. Kita punya Allo Doctor, ada Halodoc juga yang mungkin valuasinya sudah mendekati 1 billion ya, mungkin di range 300 juta sampai 500 juta US dollar sekarang gitu. Yang paling kuat gitu, dan ada banyak healthcare companies yang lain sih. Nah, kalau misalnya kita lihat lagi actually untuk healthcare sendiri it's a double digit growth from 2020 ke 2021 gitu ya, marketnya sendiri. Gitu.
Oke.
Jadi total fundingnya sekitar 1.1 billion US dollar di half 1. So it's a pretty it's a pretty high funding lah from the investment
untuk
perspective.
Periode kapan Pak? 1,5 T untuk fundingnya itu?
1,1 billion funding itu half 1 2021 saja. Gitu. Di compare 2020 it's only about 800 million US dollar. 2020 full year ya. So it's gonna be double digit growth juga by the end of this year. Gitu. Healthcare.
Jadi naiknya juga besar sekali ya, peningkatannya drastis begitu, termasuk tadi dana yang ditanamkan di healthcare ini exceeding the other sectors ya Pak, sampai 4,7 billion tadi ya, 4.7 billion.
No, 4.7 is the total investment half 1 2021. Dari 4,7 itu 1,1 dari healthcare.
Oke, dari 4,7 1,1 dari healthcare dan itu exceeding other sectors gitu ya.
Ya.
Oke, baik. Mr. Nathan, we took notes from the Mr. Suprit's overview. He said that with the right accelerator, and then so much potential in the future. If we relate it with the demographic, it's a wake-up call. So there are more. Is very potential in the future. And then looking at the broader healthcare market, if we're looking towards the digital health landscape, what are the big thrusts now in, say, just like Mr. Suprit mentioned, the use of AI and then tech-enabled devices, including wearables for home health monitoring, digital hospital system, digital consultations, and the like?
So your question is about the threats?
Sorry. Yeah, if we're looking towards the digital health landscape, what would it be in the future?
Oh, the trends. Okay. I mean, health is so diverse, so it's difficult to. It's always difficult to summarize, right? It always goes in many directions. You have so many fields in healthcare, right? Because you just have so many diseases, so many problems, and it's not like every problem is unique, but you have a diversity of problems that needs to be tackled. So the innovation will basically, some innovation will go like transversal, meaning that they will fix absolutely every healthcare issue, and some innovation will be non-transversal. And will be focused on one particular therapeutic area, right? So it's true that as a company, as a doctor, we're more focusing on transversal innovation, on things that basically will be useful for many patients. So today we have 30 million monthly active users on our platforms. We are more mass market, basically product positioned for a lot of things. So maybe I will talk about what I know on our side, and that's what we think that the innovation that will change the face of digital health in the future for, let's say, mass market product, right? So number one, what we have developed in Hello Doctor and we think is going to develop more and more in the future is like the support of doctors by robot. So healthcare is extremely complex, and we believe that it's a bit unrealistic in 2021 to believe that doctors can know absolutely everything that there is to know in healthcare, right? Every case is unique, as we mentioned. And there's such a depth of knowledge, such complexity of knowledge when it comes to diagnosing, when it comes to recommending where to go, when it comes to prescribing as well. And today I think that we have a bit of 19th century basically expectation of doctors, so that they need to remember everything in their head, and they need to know everything, which we don't expect from most professions. For example, if you work with a developer, let's say 90% of the thing they will do, they will Google it and find a solution, right? The problem is that for a consultation, you don't have time to Google, you don't have time to make a lot of research. So you need a solution to come to you on your side. And basically, as a doctor, your job will be basically to take a step back and be able to understand what the robot is referring to, what the robot is recommending, and take the final decision for the doctor, right? So doctor assisted by robot, and I think doctors and robots working hand to hand. It's already happening, right, in many fields. We see it happening already in Hello Doctor, where a robot is like assisting doctors during the consultation, and we think it's going to happen more and more, right? The same way, like, for example, the robot, when you are plane pilot, the robot is supporting you. The same way, we believe that doctors will be more and more expected to be supported by robot in their decision making, and even patients will be expecting that more and more, right? Meaning thinking like, if you can get the help of a very large database of knowledge, why would you not take it, right? That would be something that patient would expect, we believe, more and more in the future, right? And that can greatly also improve medical accuracy and support people around there, right? So that's one of the first trends that we think is going to happen in our field, at least, in terms of innovation over the coming years. Another big innovation is the development of remote diagnosis from smartphone. Smartphones are getting better and better at audio, they're getting better and better at video. I mean, the resolution is getting better and better, the audio as recognition is better and better. So we see a trend that is developing at the moment, is that we see dozens of companies working in remote diagnosis technology, where from a sound or from a video, they can diagnose some condition as well as a medical device. So we're not speaking about IoT here, it's like really from a smartphone only, you are able to get some key information about your health. For example, Hello Doctor, normally in January or even in December, I don't know exactly, it depends on the release date, but we're going to release basically an application called ResPap in our application. So we're partnering with a company called ResPap from Australia. So they already have Australian accreditation. They also have BPOM accreditation for medical device in Indonesia. And you just cough on your phone, and basically the application is able to diagnose your condition from a cough. From the simple sound of a cough, the application is able to determine what is your current condition. At the moment, better than a doctor meeting you face-to-face with a CT scan or MRI. So that's an amazing technology. They're also working on diagnosing COVID only from cough sound at the moment. They don't have it yet, but the technology can already diagnose stuff like pneumonia, stuff like COPD, bronchitis, and so forth and so forth. So already a lot of condition can be basically diagnosed from only the first sound of your smartphone. So next month, wherever you are in Indonesia, you will just have to come to Hello Doctor, speak with a doctor basically, and the doctor, if you think the doctor you need this test, the doctor will ask you to cough on your phone, and then the doctor will know what how the tool is diagnosing the condition for a cough, right? So instead of having to go to the doctor and make an MRI, CT scan, only with your phone you will be able to diagnose a lot of skin condition on your phone. We are also talking with a lot of companies working on oxygen level from only seeing, for example, your face. Oxygen level are very important, for example, during a COVID pandemic, right? Because oxygen level is one of the main reasons why you need to go to the hospital or go to emergency when you have something respiratory disease. So here, and they are quite advanced, right? They don't have yet BPOM habilitation, so we don't plan to have them in the next few months. But basically, same thing. You will take your smartphone, take a video of you, boom, you will know your oxygen level right away. There's also like great progress into blood pressure from your smartphone. So basically, your smartphone is going to become an hospital. And companies like us, we want to become an aggregator of all the solutions. So that from your smartphone, you can not only speak with a doctor, but also have access to a full range of medical device, basically connected to your audio or video on your smartphone.
Okay, that's the future right there. Before I'm going to Mr. Suprit, I want to remind the audience today, you can scan the QR code that we display on the screen right now. You can scan this QR code and then submit or fulfill the data on the form. And then we're going to pick some of your names to get special souvenirs from Mandiri Prioritas. Once again, you can scan this QR code, and in the end of the webinar, we will pick some names for you to get the special souvenirs from Mandiri Prioritas. I want to go to Mr. Suprit right now. As Pak Nathan mentioned before, it keeps evolving. We can say that in the speed of light, it's adjusting with the needs of the demographic that you mentioned before. And Pak Joshua also mentioned that the number of the money circulate in this business industry is very big and even more bigger in the future. Looking to the broader healthcare market, Pak Suprit, there are a lot of investments, as Pak Joshua mentioned before, going into many sectors, including facilities such as clinics and hospitals. Could you share data on which areas are attracting funding and which market are most active and perhaps most sought after for a new deals, Pak Suprit? Okay. It looks like we have a technical glitch with Pak Suprit. We're going to reconnecting later, but saya ingin ke Pak Joshua sekarang. Pak Joshua, berarti tadi kan cepat sekali ya Pak. Kalau tadi penuturan dari Pak Nathan itu semua tuh tidak usah menunggu waktu, semua itu bisa dilakukan dengan handphone. Bahkan yang tadinya dilakukan even oleh harus menggunakan
My
tenaga
apologies,
manusia
I
semua.
dropped off for a minute. Apologies. Had a
Oke,
signal issue earlier.
oke, sure. Baiklah kalau gitu tadi I'm going back to Mr. Suprit. Pak Joshua boleh ya? Saya ke Pak Suprit dulu tadi pertanyaannya. Pak Suprit, did you got time to catch my question before?
I did. And just before I could answer, very conveniently, technology gave up on me. So, listen, I think it's a great question, but I have to admit, we look at the listed market, or I represent the listed opportunities within healthcare. But at the same time, there are private opportunities across multiple facets. I actually share my fellow panelists' enthusiasm about technology and the use of technology. I just have a word of caution. The field of utilizing technology for diagnosing or treating illnesses is relatively nascent. And as is often the case with technology, it evolves over a period of time. And therefore, it is not impossible for some misdiagnosis that has taken place in the past. There are rare cases, but there have been reports in the US, which is perhaps the most evolved market for telemedicine or teledoc, where there have been instances or reported cases of misdiagnosis. So the opportunity is great. There is great potential. I share that enthusiasm. However, in the mix of this discussion, I do want to add that not everything is great. There are risks. And I think as portfolio managers or investment managers, we pay a lot of emphasis to that risk, to the feasibility of a technology. And ultimately, you have to recognize that the field of medicine is politically sensitive in every country. This is something which can make or break politicians. And therefore, it has been and will remain a heavily regulated industry, regardless whether it's traditional healthcare or it's digital healthcare. So a part of this you saw earlier in 2018 in China, just like you saw China recently clamp down on internet companies facing consumers. In 2018, China actually clamped down on drug pricing at that time. Again, largely to do with social harmony, because if some sort of medical practice leads to some sort of balance being tilted, it can lead to the regulators clamping down very quickly. So things are looking positive. We are optimistic, but you need to be selective. You need to have discretion. You need, I'm certainly not an expert in this field. I think my fellow panelists are experts. I would, in fact, probably get an expert to apply their analysis as to when I have to invest, which is a sound investment company. But Iqbal, to your specific question, which field is getting more capital? It's tough for me to pin it down, and honestly, I don't have insights into those. But the broader category of healthcare does indeed enjoy more focus from policymakers like governments, like institutions. And I think that will likely continue post the pandemic, not just for infectious diseases, but as I mentioned, because of the big demographic impediments that are coming, which is aging populations, particularly in wealthy countries, you will see more and more governments dedicate more resources and money towards the field of medical research across different facets, which allows them to cater to the healthcare needs of their populace. I'll pass it back to you.
Oke, baik. I want to go to Pak Joshua. Right now, Pak Joshua tadi Pak Suprit menyebutkan ya bahwa semua masih tergantung dengan kebijakan-kebijakan yang dikeluarkan, termasuk oleh pemerintah, kebijakan soal kesehatan, terutama masih di era pandemi seperti sekarang. Nah, kalau dari sudut pandang venture capitalist nih, Pak Joshua, ada tidak sih spesialis yang berfokus pada perawatan kesehatan atau lebih pada membangun portofolio yang termasuk startup kesehatan digital, Pak? Kalau tadi katanya kalau bisa sebaiknya meng-hire experts untuk akhirnya memutuskan untuk berinvestasi di healthcare ini? Kalau dari sudut pandang Anda seperti apa, Pak Joshua?
So, kalau untuk the existing investors dari startup-startup yang udah ada, especially yang udah lebih established ya, lebih established meaning mereka, mereka bukan barang yang baru ada kemarin gitu. They have been in the industry for maybe 4 or 5 years. First and foremost, biasanya mereka ada healthcare expert sendiri in-house gitu. For example, I know some of the some of the health tech players di Indonesia, Good Doctor, Halodoc, di in-house doctor gitu ya, untuk bantu konsultasi mereka because they are in that particular field. And it's tadi seperti yang Pak Suprit bilang, it's very ada potential risk yang bisa muncul ya kalau misalnya company ini nggak comply dengan apa yang sudah di-set oleh oleh pemerintah kita dan juga regulator kesehatan yang lain. Nah, itu yang pertama. Dan kemudian from the fund perspective, waktu bikin investasi gitu ya, ada nggak sih yang spesialis, tadi pertanyaannya seperti itu ya, spesialisasi di healthcare. Biasanya kalau venture capital mereka nggak special, like benar-benar fokus di satu industri. Mereka biasanya try to be as agnostic as possible karena memang naturnya venture capital itu cukup risky ya aset kelasnya gitu. So one of the ways we mitigate the risk adalah dengan diversification of the sectors. Jadi biasanya jarang banget ada yang cuman fokusnya di healthcare saja kalau untuk modal Ventura. However, we see now ada banyak potential candidates nih untuk kita bilangnya seed startups gitu. Jadi maksudnya startup yang baru mulai. Jadi aspiring entrepreneurs gitu ya. Mereka tertarik untuk untuk bikin startup yang fokusnya memang di healthcare, di health technology gitu ya, since day one. So sekarang kita ngelihatnya maybe not di fund level, tapi di level kayak akselerator atau inkubator. Itu udah mulai banyak program-program yang memang fokusnya hanya spesial untuk healthcare startups gitu. Mereka bisa kasih investasi, bisa enggak, tapi yang paling penting itu sebenarnya nge-bridge antara ya tadi aspiring entrepreneurs tadi jadi entrepreneur beneran gitu ya. Itu kita mulai lihat lah, baik di Indonesia maupun di Singapura ataupun di regional Southeast Asia. Tapi biasanya kalau mainly still Singapura sama Indonesia gitu ya. At least di dua negara ini kita mulai lihat banyak gerakan di in that particular stage, di seed stage, pre-seed sampai seed stage lah, healthcare focus accelerator atau healthcare focus incubator. Gitu sih Pak.
Oke. Jadi lebih terfokus ya, tidak spesialis tapi ada upaya-upaya yang dilakukan untuk lebih fokus kepada isu tersebut. I want to go to Pak Nathan now. Pak Nathan, as we know that ever since the technology keeps evolving, so customers have more time to spend on researching health issues and healthier lifestyles. Usually they should go to the doctor just for asking a simple questions when they have symptoms, but all in the palm of their hands now. They don't have to consult. All they have to do is like Googling it and then they found the answer. How do Halodoc adapt with this phenomenon?
Sure. First, a small comment about misdiagnosing, right, in digital health, in telemedicine, right? So obviously it can happen. One thing that is important to remember is that it also happens offline quite often, right? And the huge advantage of digital health is that the discussion are recorded. It's much more transparent, especially for us where everything is recorded with chat. So if a user have a complaint, if there's a misdiagnosis, if there some mishandling from the doctor, the level of transparency that you can have with digital health is vastly superior to what exists today in the offline world, right? So doctors are human beings. It's impossible for a doctor to be perfect. Obviously, a misdiagnosis can happen online, can happen offline. It's true that online you have less information, so doctors need to be extremely careful about what they can diagnose and what they cannot diagnose in the short term. And something to remember is that definitely there's a risk in this transparency, because as it's more transparent, then it's much easier to see and it's much easier to complain about, right? But we believe that in the end, transparent ecosystem wins. And we believe that also patients will feel reassured by the fact that there's this level of transparency, and if the doctor make a mistake, they will be able to have a much easier recourse to complain about it than if you are face-to-face and basically
doctors can defend themselves, I guess, much more better than a patient in general. Well, so we definitely don't believe that digital health can solve everything. There will be mistake. If doctors are human beings, it will be impossible to have a 100% security there. But we believe that the tools that we put in place and that similar company to us put in place, normally if there's a right regulation around it as well, will ensure great patient security today in the mid run as well. So in terms of this, I mean, for us, I mean, it's our business, right? That users are using online, getting information. That's what we built our business on. It's like we believe that patients do not want to wait very long to get answer to our first information. Going to see a doctor is very time consuming. It's also very expensive. So definitely patients more and more are expecting to have some kind of, instead of waiting to go see a doctor and take 7 hours to have a first opinion online, to also have second opinion online. So definitely that's something that we believe, whether we like it or not, whether we believe that medically speaking, this is good. This is something just that will be a consumer need and a consumer request on the long run. On our side, we believe that medically, this is very positive, that patients need to be empowered, patients need to get information as soon as they can, especially in Indonesia, where patients tend to postpone as much as possible to go see a doctor. We believe that having the possibility to speak to a doctor, having the possibility to interact with someone or to read an article within a few minutes is critical to take the right decision. Because when you are sick as a patient, the huge problem is that you have no idea whether your case is serious or whether your case is not serious. Sometimes you think you have nothing, but you need to go to the emergency. And sometimes you think you're going to die and it's absolutely nothing, and you just need to take a glass of water and relax. And as a patient, you don't have the tool to know when to make the difference. So you need support at this key moment. And that's this key moment when you're at home and you need to decide whether you're going to see a doctor, when you're going to see a doctor in 3 days, today, what type of doctor. That's an absolutely key moment in the patient journey and decision making that can save lives, and where digital health as today is extremely useful and impactful, we believe, on our side.
Okay. So I want to go to Pak Suprit now. Pak Suprit, how do you think the pandemic has changed the way people see health needs, and therefore what big changes in the healthcare sector are you expecting to see, let's say, after we listen to the explanation from Mr. Nathan and also Pak Joshua, let's say 3 to 5 years, could be anywhere from the sector, facilities, nutrition, supplements, AI, home herbals, etc. And which ones do you expect to be the most important in Indonesia market specifically, Pak Suprit?
So I have to admit, I don't have enough insights for the Indonesia market, so I do express my apologies in advance for that. But I think you touched upon a very important topic, which is patients using Google to self-diagnose or to learn a little bit more. I have come across some jokes with the medical practitioners who actually put a board outside that if for those who consult Google, I will charge you twice as much because I have to convince you that what Google has first told you is not accurate and then diagnose you. So I've also got personal experiences of friends, family, and extended family network who during COVID just relied too much of information on the internet to self-medicate. Some of them landed up in some situations which required hospitalization as well. So it is a disturbing trend, so to say. So to me, what Nathan said is important, which is potentially if telemedicine can replace this tendency of patients to Google search, to self-diagnose instead, just like you would Google, if telemedicine is convenient, it doesn't require you to get stuck in bad traffic jams, to find parking space, to find time. The convenience and the benefits are tremendous. So I think there are tremendous benefits for telemedicine. One of them being just weaning away patients from this tendency to self-diagnose or self-medicate using information on the internet. As I mentioned, I absolutely do not have insights on specific on Indonesia, but I would generally say the pandemic has woken us as individuals. why has it woken up? It's not just about making sure that we survive this pandemic. It's also woken us up to lifestyles. For instance, those individuals who realize that they've got comorbidities because of their lifestyle. For instance, if people are obese, if people are smoking, if people have diabetes because of their overweight, if they're hypertension because of their lifestyle, and they realize that they are potentially individuals who are at greater risks when it comes to COVID-19, they realize they need to change their lifestyle in order to lead a healthier life for them to be able to combat potential threats from such pandemics in the future. So I think at a very individual and social level, this has shaken the foundation a little bit in a positive way, which implies that individuals will take better care of themselves, because so far it's been upon the policymakers in a way, or governments, to take care of individuals. What I'm trying to imply is that this will probably wake up individuals to say, it's not just the governments that are going to look after you, you need to take better care of yourselves. Okay. So it's not just how much money they're going to spend on healthcare, it's just healthier lifestyle, watching how they live, what they consume, and how they just go about their daily lifestyle. Obviously, there are exceptions, and I'm generalizing, so please forgive my generalization. But I do come across several instances of my network where I find individuals who have resolved, hopefully, to continue their healthier lifestyle even post the pandemic.
Okay, sure. The mindset shifting there we talk about, but how people take care of their health individually. Pak Joshua, we have seen the creation of some super apps in the retail and consumer sector. Is this something which may happen in healthcare in the future, or is the nature of the business so it's going to be less prone to consolidation, the super apps, Pak Joshua?
It already happened, actually. So right now, if you ask Nathan, he will say that our doctor is definitely a super app for healthcare, right? So it's already happening. If you ask the CEO of Halodoc, then he will say that Halodoc is the ultimate super app for healthcare as well. Grab sama Ping An ya, so Ping An Good Doctor juga another contender for the healthcare super app. BUMN, kementerian dan juga beberapa BUMN yang lain juga sedang ada inisiatif gitu untuk membuat sebuah super app super app healthcare gitu, udah di launch namanya aja gitu ya, yang barengan sama Mandiri InHealth juga gitu, sister company-nya Mandiri Capital. So it's already happening sebenarnya.
Joshua, kalau masing-masing punya super app semua, itu nanti gimana? Akan kira-kira ada rebutan istilahnya tuh, ada hal-hal yang bermain di lahan yang sama gitu nggak sih kalau semuanya misalnya membuat super app?
Right now yang bisa saya bilang sih sebenarnya walaupun semuanya rata-rata super app, prepositionnya ke customer-nya at least on top of mind-nya tuh lebih berbeda ya. So for example, I think in terms of telemedicine gitu ya, Our Doctor is number one gitu ya untuk ngasih insights mengenai kesehatan, mengenai pengobatan, mencari di web informasinya, dan juga untuk telekonsultasi, Our Doctor is number one. Walaupun sebenarnya they're more than that gitu. Halodoc prepositionnya lebih ke medicine delivery, jualan obat gitu ya. Jadi orang waktu on top of mind kalau misalnya mau cari obat langsung carinya Halodoc gitu. So walaupun sama-sama super app, tapi I think for now semuanya punya ini masing-masing ya, top preposition masing-masing, at least di top of mind-nya customer sekarang gitu. Cuman tadi kan you mention super app ini rata-rata consumer app. What I believe in the next 4 or 5 years sih, kalau kita ngomongin healthcare is more than just consumer app, to be very honest with you gitu. Consumer app ini udah deket in my take as a venture capitalist gitu. I think 2-3 years from now we will see maybe dollar atau unicorn healthcare yang positioningnya super app gitu untuk consumer. Nextnya apa gitu kan? That's actually lebih interesting buat kita gitu. Things like precision medication, for example, jadi ter-enable sekarang teknologinya karena sekarang rumah sakit sudah punya alat tes PCR gitu ya. Jadi saya juga baru tahu last week bahwa sebenarnya sekarang precision medication untuk cancer udah bisa dijalanin, udah bisa diimplementasi di rumah sakit karena situ rumah sakit udah punya alat tes PCR gitu ya sekarang. So it's gonna be interesting. The second one itu kayak sebenarnya ini juga crucial gitu, seperti jadi sebenarnya kayak database atau storage untuk data kesehatan gitu ya, data kesehatan masyarakat gitu ya, yang centralized. Kita unfortunately sampai sekarang masih belum punya gitu. Padahal itu crucial banget untuk any innovation di healthcare yang ingin dilakukan gitu. We need that type of database. Dan yang ketiga tadi sempat di-mention di slide-nya Pak Suprit juga kayak ini ya, genomics ya. Anything yang bisa gene yang related to gene modification. Itu something yang sebenarnya for venture capitalist karena kita ngelihatnya 5-10 tahun ke depan gitu ya, those things are much more interesting gitu kalau kita ngelihat long-term investment-nya, long-term horizon sih. Itu sih Pak Iqbal, things that I can say.
Okay, Pak Nathan, the last question in short answer. How do you see the opportunity developed further for your existing business platform, Pak Nathan?
Yeah, on our side, like we believe that all the macro elements in Indonesia are very positive towards digital health for several reasons. Right, number one, Indonesia is a country where most doctors are concentrated in big cities, and you have most of the countries where there's just a lack of doctor. Right, so we believe that basically tier 2, tier 3 cities, remote areas are the areas that need the most telemedicine. Those areas are not totally educated yet about telemedicine. And when it's going to happen, we believe it's going to be a big boom for our industry. Right? So something that we're working on, basically on how to educate faster those populations, something critical for us in the long run. Number two, for many reasons, seeing a doctor in Indonesia can either be very inconvenient or very expensive. And we believe that digital health can basically lower the cost for the user in general to access healthcare. Of course, in terms of time or in terms of money, much more than in other market. The price difference between online and offline is quite important in Indonesia. And the third aspect for us in terms of growing our business would be about financing, right? So we believe that financing health in the end, it's what's matter the most. It's the biggest pain point in Indonesia. Only 2% of Indonesian people have a health insurance today. And we believe it's a question of infrastructure, right? There's a problem with infrastructure in the private healthcare system. In terms of organization, we don't have to go in detail on this, but we believe that the technology we're building is going to solve a lot of problems as it comes to health insurance in Indonesia, so that we can go from a few percent, 2 or 3% that are covered, to more 20 or 30% that are covered over the coming decade.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pak Nathan, Pak Suprit, and Pak Joshua for sharing your insights to all the audiences from this session's webinar. And we would like to announce 2 winners for today's webinar who will get the special souvenirs from Mandiri Prioritas. We would like to call the first one Wahyu Praditya and also Muhammad Abdilubis. Congratulations for Wahyu Praditya and Muhammad Abdilubis for berhasil mendapatkan souvenir khusus dari Mandiri Prioritas. Sekali lagi, I would like to say thank you very much to Mr. Nathan and then Mr. Suprit and also Mr. Joshua. Thank you very much for your time from sharing your insights and knowledge on this session's webinar. Dan terima kasih juga kepada para audiens sudah bergabung dalam sesi webinar kali ini. Itu mengakhiri waktu kita kali ini. Semoga kita dapat berjumpa dalam sesi-sesi webinar selanjutnya. Terima kasih kepada semua orang yang sudah bergabung dan kepada panelis, kepada pengamatan mendalam mereka di pasar hari ini. Karena durasi yang terbatas, kita harus mengakhiri sesi webinar kali ini. Saya Iqbal Himawan, sekali lagi mengakhiri sesi webinar yang diselenggarakan atas kerjasama Forbes Indonesia dan Mandiri Private. Sampai jumpa. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Kita semua memiliki prioritas yang berbeda. Prioritasku dalam berkarya adalah mewujudkan sebuah visi. Aku ingin semua yang telah kucapai tidak berhenti di sini, namun terus berkembang. Tidak ada yang memahami prioritasku selain diriku sendiri dan Bank Mandiri.
Mandiri Prioritas, memahami prioritas Anda untuk kini dan masa depan.